now we will have the next presentation, and I'm happy to see you on the screen, Mrs. Truxius. We already said we met in person already last year in December. I was really impressed with regard to your presentation. And now, as I said in the introduction, cybersecurity has become more and more important, especially with regard to the crisis, I believe. And I believe as well that you have a lot of things to do currently. So I'm really happy that you are here in our online meeting, and I will now hand over to you. And you said already that you will introduce yourself and I believe your institution as well. Thank you.
So thank you very much for the kind introduction. Before I really go into detail why I'm here and why I'm allowed to tell you something about cybersecurity, I would like to implant the following statement into your brain. So cybersecurity is like a vaccination. For me, when I compare a viral infection in the human body with vulnerabilities in basically any IT system, for me, it's the same. Maybe another analogy to prove my hypothesis that cybersecurity is a vaccination. Cybersecurity and vaccinations need refreshments in terms of regular revaccinations, immunizations, and in terms of cybersecurity with updates. So, as I said, I will introduce myself now. My name is Dina Truxius. I'm working for the Federal Office for Information Security in Bonn, Germany. And I have the great honor to give one of the keynotes today. And I'm really happy that you invited me for that purpose. During my talk, I will focus on medical device cybersecurity, and I need your awareness, all of your awareness, because I will immunize you, and during my talk, I will expose you to increasing amounts of medical device cybersecurity. So let's start with the initial dose. So I will, as I said, throughout my talk, I will expose you to increasing amounts of cybersecurity, thereby covering all those mentioned points. So in order to have you all on the same level, I would like to talk about digitalization. As you have seen in the previous talk, which was really impressive, digitalization is not only in connected healthcare, so digitalization is all around you. So from A to Z, from autonomous automotives to the Zoom app that we are using here, digitalization is in every field and you constantly get exposed to it. The current trends that are named here range from connected home to connected healthcare. That means you, me, all of us, we are and we live in a highly digitalized and connected world already. As a consequence, all those devices contain software and or hardware. And here I wanted to express that all those fields have to be covered somehow. There has to be cybersecurity. And with the title, Yes, We Can, as a BSI, and Yes, We Care, I want to sharpen and corroborate that we take care of all those different fields in terms of cybersecurity. As a general announcement for further vaccination, for sure, I can tell you that every IT system is susceptible to vulnerabilities in principle. It is not a matter of you getting hacked or your company getting hacked. Sorry to disappoint you, it will happen at a certain point, I'm sure, not with everyone. But the crucial part is actually the behavior post-hack. So how you deal with reported vulnerabilities in a coordinated and timely manner. So you will experience vulnerabilities in systems. So no matter what you're using, if you have industrial control systems, Solili software or medical device, you will experience vulnerabilities in those IT systems and you have to deal with them. So as I said, the BSI is covering all of those fields. So the BSI is the National Cybersecurity Authority in Germany, and we have lots of topics, but the major areas of responsibility are shown here in black, red, and yellow. So we are into prevention, detection, and reaction. These are the main responsibilities. And we have processes in place to deal, for example, with cybersecurity attacks or vulnerabilities. Apart from that and many more things, we, for example, publish guidances. We define state-of-the-art. We help to coordinate processes, disclosure processes. So when hackers or external security researchers report vulnerabilities in systems to us, we help coordinating this. And additionally, we want to raise also your awareness. And I said, I need your awareness throughout my whole talk towards more cybersecurity. So the BSI is essentially a thought leader, and maybe you didn't know, but we are funded by law in 1991. So the BSI is existing for quite a long time, but in the recent year, due to digitalization, the German government has realized that it's essential to have more IT specialists when you want to have a digitalized Germany. So we have a massive growth of new employees. We have a high amount of natural people with natural science background and IT background. We have lots of women working here, as you've seen here with my talk. We are cooperating with all other federal institutions in principle, and we are also connected globally, and we do EU-wide and international cooperation apart from the national-wide close and trustful cooperation. You see that we have a budget of approximately 135 million euros, or we had it in 2019, and we usually launch projects with that money. So this is actually tax money, and we can use it for certain studies. And I will, during my talk, show you an example of such a study. So basically what I'm doing with our money to work on cybersecurity and medical devices. So as maybe expected, I'm a representative from a federal office, as I said already. And I guess you expect me to talk about regulation and legislation. You might have the assumption that it is boring, but I can tell you the first thing is definitely not boring. Don't laugh, but in a nutshell, we as the BSI have a license to hack. So in Germany, it is prohibited to hack devices. So there's really a hacking section, and it is punished. As a BSI, we have a special cybersecurity law, which is called the BSI law. And there are two sections I will explain a bit further, and which relate to the license to hack. So this is section 7 and 7a. This law allows us in principle to assess and evaluate any IT product in the world. So that means no matter if it's a robot, if it's an automotive, if it's the Zoom app, or if it's a medical device, in principle, the BSI is allowed to assess the cybersecurity of those devices and then report it to the respective vendor or manufacturer. This is basically covered by section 7a. So we can, when we find vulnerabilities or bugs in a system, we ask the manufacturer for a statement and also for a timeline, for example, for the fixes. So this section allows us thereafter to also disclose the findings. So we know about those vulnerabilities. Ideally, they are mitigated and in the end fixed, and they are no vulnerabilities anymore. And what is the, let's say, the highest, the most visible thing we can do is we can in principle do cybersecurity warnings if it's necessary. So in the field of medical devices, it has never happened, but in terms of, for example, the usage of like home monitoring systems or other products, the BSI has released cybersecurity warnings, either to the public or to a defined circle of participants, like whenever you have bugs in like critical infrastructures, you particularly address those stakeholders. As I said, we also use this, this section to look at different systems. They are named below. So in my section, we are dealing with the cybersecurity in public health. So we examined health apps, also medical devices and projects, and we are making use out of this special law. So next comes the EU-wide law. As already heard, the medical device regulation, it started in 2017 and is now postponed to 1 year. But nonetheless, the medical device regulation is the first regulation that is explicitly naming cybersecurity. As a consequence for this regulation, the national law has to be, I will not say trimmed, but has to be adapted to the EU-wide regulation. And what we see as a trend towards more cybersecurity, that software and in medical devices and software as a medical device, and also cybersecurity, so meaning interactions with the environment, a trend towards more security, and that security can affect safety, for example, is taken into account. And we see a development also in the regulatory field and in the legislation towards more cybersecurity. So it is a trend. We have digitalization everywhere, and cybersecurity becomes more and more important, especially when you connect devices and have interactions with multiple devices. So, as I said, we regularly do study projects, and I would like to give an example on one project that I'm leading, and that started in 2019. So I'm usually asked, like, yeah, Dina, is it really the case that you can, for example, hack a brain stimulator, that you really affect people just because of cybersecurity vulnerabilities? And in order to clarify this and to really shed light on the current situation, we launched this project MoneyMate. It's about manipulation of medical devices, and we want to see the state of cybersecurity in a subset of medical devices. So I will present you the MoneyMate landscape. We are talking about medical devices. We are talking about connected medical devices. We know that medical devices have special requirements and legislation. Maybe the slide before, I forgot the MDD or the current directive. So there is really, we are in an already highly regulated field with medical devices. And as a BSI, we are not responsible for the regulation. We are not a notified body. We are exclusively dealing with cybersecurity. So the MoneyMate project has the aim to assess the current cybersecurity state in medical devices. What we are doing is, together with our contractor, which is the ERNW Research in Heidelberg, we are we do ethical hacking, so hacking on medical devices. Those devices are never connected to patients. So believe me, throughout my project, neither animals nor any human being was harmed. So what we are doing is we are looking for vulnerabilities. So we are testing those devices. Is it possible to perform any kind of attack that basically comes into our mind and that is maybe specific for certain interfaces? We want the manufacturer, the vendors, to get a feeling for vulnerabilities and to see what the current state is. Additionally, for us, we can use those results to really write recommendations and to influence probably legislation further. Like, yeah, we do see, or we have a scientific evidence that there is a need to implement more cybersecurity, and this is one of our hopes or our aims after the project. I said we have a contractor, the ERNW Research, and they are performing the security assessments and the so-called pen testing. So they are penetrating those medical devices and see what they can do and how far they can get. So they are simulating a malicious attacker, and they check those devices for their robustness towards cybersecurity, for their resilience. As I said, my project is basically a state-sponsored or governmental-sponsored pen testing for manufacturers. Here in this project, I'm not using my special legislation, so I'm not using my license to hack, because I think it doesn't make sense. What I'm using instead is I'm looking for a really trustful cooperation among all stakeholders. So with this project, I'm trying to bring security researchers, vendors, and authorities closer together, because I believe that processes and the post-attack behavior and in essence, the behavior is important, and that will bring us forward. And it requires a certain amount of training, that you know how to deal with vulnerabilities, with reported vulnerabilities, and how you communicate with all the different stakeholders. So our aim is then to report the vulnerabilities, I will go into that into more detail, to the vendor, start a disclosure process, and constantly communicate, collaborate, and cooperate together in order to fix those things, to make devices, if possible, better, to bring cybersecurity into everyone's brain, to vaccinate manufacturers, vendors, and maybe also you, and to finally allow for recommending or something or releasing guidelines, which is one of our tasks, as I said before, because we can define state-of-the-art technology. We don't want to do finger pointing. We will not compare manufacturers with each other. It is about what we are finding, how it can be maybe prevented in the future. Is it really critical? And what we can do in the future to prevent such occurrences, to make things safer and more secure. So I was talking about the project, and there are certain requirements in my project because I cannot hack the whole medical device landscape. This is definitely not possible, and this is also not my duty as a Federal Office for Information Security. So this is a first research project that aims to point into the right direction. So the project requirements for Moneymeet are networked medical devices. That means the more interfaces, the better. So because any interface adds an additional level of the attack surface. So the more interfaces I have, the higher the potential attack surface is. In order to restrict those devices to newer and networked and connected devices, maybe in conjunction with using an app or something else, I asked for the following requirement: that the devices are no longer than 5 years in the field, meaning since the beginning of 2014. All those devices are taken into account, and out of 5 categories. So we selected 5 portal medical devices, namely patient monitors, ventilators, insulin pumps, ICDs and accessories, or the eco environment, and the infusion pumps. Out of each of the 5 categories, we have chosen 2 devices to do cybersecurity assessments with. but according to these requirements, we first did a market survey to see what is on the market in these 5 categories. And then we chose 2 out of the list and asked the manufacturer to collaborate with us. So for me, it is really important to have an equal treatment of all partners. As an authority, I have to treat everyone in the same manner in order not to influence the market. So what we agreed on in the project is that we get medical devices, ideally in the right corner, via a testing contract. So beforehand, we are communicating our aims in our project to the respective manufacturers with the devices we are interested in for testing. And we try to sign a contract that is like exclusive a priori knowledge for the manufacturer. So the manufacturer agrees to give us a device and therefore gets exclusive knowledge about the IT security features in his product. So this is in the deep technical report that is exclusively handed over to the manufacturer. It is not made public and it will not be published in the final documents. After receiving the technical report, we asked the vendor to do a risk assessment in terms of safety and security, because we can only look at the devices from the outside. We haven't designed those devices on our own, and the vendor is the appropriate person to assess safety and security, and he's responsible for the device. As I said, it is important to have really a close collaboration and a trustful communication throughout the whole process. And we want to treat everyone the same, and we also give everyone the chance to talk to us at every time if there are any problems, or if people just are stuck in a process. Our usual process is 90 days of a so-called coordinated vulnerability disclosure. A coordinated vulnerability disclosure is maybe not that common to everyone. It is like a responsible vulnerability disclosure, basically saying that we include all stakeholders, security researchers, vendors, and authorities, and we work together on fixing those vulnerabilities within a certain time frame. This time frame is not fixed. It can be extended due to justified reasons like the COVID pandemic. As one of the last things is for good cybersecurity practice is the assignment of so-called CVEs, common vulnerabilities and exposures, and possible advisories. Whenever you find vulnerabilities in any IT system, you can assign those CVE numbers to the vulnerabilities to give them, let's say, an identity code, to name a vulnerability, and that others can see this vulnerability publicly. So in order to have it transparent and to prevent it for the future. So others can use this information to not include such vulnerabilities per default in their devices, for example. I guess you are interested in my experience, and what I can tell you is it is not easy to get medical devices. Second, it is not easy to get medical devices for security assessments. Third, it is not easy to sometimes fix vulnerabilities in medical devices immediately. So what I experienced till now, so out of the 10 devices, we have currently assessed 9. So we are really good in time. But what I see is that there is a different level of awareness among, let's say, the vendors that are participating in the project, but this is expected. There are different companies, different sizes, different locations, different business units. So it is really a heterogeneous mixture, and that is expected. We found vulnerabilities, as I said, 9 out of 10 devices are already tested in every color. So we find really low vulnerabilities, which are characterized by low in info, but we also found critical vulnerabilities in the devices. I'm not here to scare you. I can tell you, or I will spoiler something, that we literally found no patient risk in most of the devices, except for one device there was potential risk, but the others seem to be really, really robust. What we also experienced throughout the processes that I mentioned before is that there are different policies among vendors how to deal with coordinated vulnerability disclosures. So people are aware of such processes, people are maybe not aware of these processes. I guess several people really took the chance to learn something during the project. When you talk to people and you do such a project, it is also always a matter of responsibilities. So we encountered here different models. So let's say in the essence or in a nutshell, I can tell you it's really important to talk to the respective team that is responsible for a certain system in order to get things fixed. So it is from the perspective of communication with a group of people, it is really essential to address the right people and to bring the right people for those discussions together. Another experience is that the test setups are really different in terms of the amount of documentation that is handed over and the amount of extra accessories for the devices that we tested. Nonetheless, as time is running, and I'm not here to bore you, but I'm here to give you some cybersecurity to go. So this is basically your last vaccination, your last shot. So summarizing what I've just said is what is important. It is not important to not get hacked, because you will get hacked. It sounds a bit rude, but it is important that for you to have a post-attack behavior, to establish, let's say an emergency plan, responsibility plans, to really plan how to deal with a crisis. With my project, I'm in principle inducing, let's say, a crisis, because I'm telling a vendor that there are possible vulnerabilities in the system. So there has to be a way to deal with those things. And we are doing a project, but it can also happen that external ethical hackers report vulnerabilities to a vendor. What can you do as a vendor? How do you deal with that? And this is one of the aims of our project, to show how these coordinated processes can look like. It's always a strategy, but what we are doing is one possibility how to deal with it. As I said, cybersecurity is like vaccination. It has to be refreshed. And what is our current opinion is that pen testing, regular pen testing, and regular external and independent security assessments are the best way to protect your devices, no matter if it's a robot or a medical device. It is a continuous process. It is not like, just adding a little bit of cybersecurity like pepper to your dish. It has to be implemented from the beginning and from the initial design. What we have seen in the project is the coordinated vulnerability disclosure process. So how you deal with reported vulnerabilities as a manufacturer. Do you freak out? Can you manage it? Do you have internal processes? Will you talk about it? Will you hide it? As a recommendation for all of you, especially for vendors, please install something like a cybersecurity address or a cybersecurity team in order to raise awareness, in order to have a contact point where those vulnerabilities can be reported to. From our experience, it is not only beneficial, but advantageous or even a must-have to have this cooperation and collaboration among all stakeholders, because otherwise you will not get all the information for the testing. And if we wouldn't work in that sense together, I guess we would not be able to fulfill the requirements for those processes. In the end, I'm hoping that the results, that the proof of concept, what we aim to get with the project MoneyMeet, helps for standardizing and harmonizing our ideas and probably influencing guidances, state-of-the-art technologies, and even legislation. So I hope you are now vaccinated. I hope you have ingested some cybersecurity into your body. And thank you for your attention. I'm happy to take questions now.
Thank you, Ms. Truxius. Thank you very much for your presentation. I believe I'm now vaccinated, but not completely, because maybe it's the same for all the others. This is an eye-opener for me, because I live in my small regulatory world. I believe a lot of participants have the same thing. We have our responsibilities, which is, for example, regulatory affairs or software development or whatever. But I see that cybersecurity is a more comprising topic. And then so far, I'm happy that we have this summary in front of us. We have a lot of things to do, I believe. But let's start with the participants. So, is there a question here for Ms. Truxius? So, Johannes Lotz
raises his hand.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for the talk. I have one question. You have been talking about vulnerability disclosure, and is it only a disclosure to the vendors, or will there also be a public disclosure at some point?
So it depends on the subject. In principle, I would aim in my project for a public disclosure, but there are different levels of how we disclose things. So if we, for example, receive the information that a third-party component that is built in basically everything, no matter if it's an automotive or a medical device, we can warn or inform certain stakeholders about this. But we can also inform publicly. With this project, we are aiming, if the vendor agrees, for a publication, for a public publication in the end when everything is fixed. So we are not here to give you hacking advice, and we will not release anything that is not bespoken beforehand with the vendor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions?
We have a question in the chat by Mr. Nordmans. Can manufacturers be held responsible for not updating their product for cybersecurity? At the end, the hospitals and caregivers are the ones who are responsible for updating medical devices in the hospital, and patients may be heard there. But how to guarantee that medical devices are updated in the hospitals or at home? Updating medical devices is not a normal procedure.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. So what I understood is basically the problem of updating processes. Yeah, there are, let's say, innovations in place, how you, for example, separate the medical device part from a, let's say, a communication part inside a device, so that you can update the medical device and the platform or the communication device independently. So lots of manufacturers are working on remote update processes, and what has to be assured is the following. So in principle, the manufacturer or vendor is responsible for the update process as long as this service contract is signed. In many cases, the hospitals cannot even update the devices on their own, so they need help. And we do see that there is, lots of chaos in that sense. There has to be done something, and we hope that also our project can at least touch this part a little bit to inspire. And we are working with different sections in our office and with different stakeholders exactly on those things in the future.
Thank you. So the next question, or I see a hand from Kolya Picora. So it's up to you now.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dina, for your presentation. I think when we talk about cybersecurity, I think about how the manufacturers can realize cybersecurity assessments during the development on their own. And I know that in aviation, they have techniques for quantification of cybersecurity measures. Are there any plans by the BSI to give recommendations to quantify measures, or to help the manufacturers to get an idea if they are doing enough for the products to have enough cybersecurity?
Yeah, as well as the last point, this is a really good question. Yeah, this is one of our future aims for sure, to assist in that sense. What I've seen so far is that mostly notified bodies have problems to assess cybersecurity also according to MDR in medical devices. But so what you can currently do is the following during the development process. You can in principle test the robustness of your interfaces. When you do, for example, a scan on the device, just a scan, which is not invasive, just scanning for ports. If the device crashes, it is not robust. And even within the development, you can do certain, even automated testing. I mean, you definitely need a human being in the end to really tell what is going on, but you can do automated testing already during the development process. And there are standards that are exactly pointing in that direction to do it throughout the whole life cycle of the product. So it is coming. Slightly, but it's coming.
Okay, great. I do not see any hands. So, one further hand. Felix von Winterfeld has a question.
Yeah, I would like to know if you have any recommendations on CVE databases that we can use for us to explore further vulnerabilities if we develop devices.
So in general, this is basic. So this database for CVEs is located in the United States. So the MITRE, which is a fusion of researchers from the MIT, they are in charge of the database for those CVEs. So you can assign CVEs there. And we work in close collaboration with American authorities, MITRE, FDA, and also CISA, in order to assign those CVEs. But you can check for mitre.com, and there you've on CVE, and you should immediately land on that page, and you see a list of all the vulnerabilities that are disclosable, so that are disclosed, publicly available, and that were into certain devices. So you can search for that. Another possibility to inform yourself about vulnerabilities, for example, also in medical devices, are ICS advisories.
Can you give us a URL or something like that in order for us to have a look at these databases?
Sure, I will try to attach some information to my talk. So my talk is open, and I will provide you with some URLs regarding coordinated vulnerability disclosure, assigning CVEs, and finding advisories in the huge internet world.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Fine? Okay.
Thanks a lot.
That's
Bye.
great. Thank you. Thank you. So, is there another question?
There is another question from the chat.
Yes.
Which I lost now. Here it is. Mr. Schröder has a question. I try to summarize this. It's kind of long, the text, but as far as I understand, it's about operating system. When a software runs, for example, on a Microsoft computer, and the operating system gets an update, which is an easy step to do. Could be any other operating system also, I guess. Is there an easy solution for the manufacturer to do testing and change management, because the operating system is something that's not developed by the manufacturer?
Yeah, this is a really good question, and I'm assuming you are thinking about Windows XP machines and maybe CT scanners. As a reference to the previous talk, maybe. Yeah, so this is really a problem. So what we find when we look at medical devices is exactly like an old operating system. But in certain cases, it is valid to have it that way. And as I said before, there are trends in separating basically the operating system from the medical part of the device in order to get updates for the operating system and to not affect the performance or let's say the work of the medical device part of this device. And so this is one possibility to circumvent it, and it is tough to adjust operating system updates to your products. So I also do see here a need of, I will not say regulation, but on finding consensus how to deal with those problems further. I mean, there is patch day from Windows. I mean, sometimes I guess you all click this, you need to install an update and start your computer, and it's also annoying me sometimes, but it's valid. And the amount of updates that are coming, I guess it's increasing rather than diminishing. And it is important to find solutions for independent updating and to have secure devices throughout their lifetime. Thank you.
To me, this is not only a point of old operating systems like Windows XP, as you mentioned. It's also a question for quite actual systems like Windows 10 or also other operating systems, because if this operating system is being part of a medical device, then it is within the responsibility of the manufacturer, because every update also is a change on the medical device software itself. So we can't allow the user to just click update on the Windows system, because then the operator or the user would change the medical system, which then is not approved. So I think this is within the approval process is a big issue where there's no common solution yet. But maybe you have, since you're expert in this field, some kind of recommendation for a more easy workflow and how to deal with it on a right way.
Yeah, so just a quick comment. I totally agree on that. It is really tough to have an operating system additionally assessed, and you need to check if those changes, updates are affecting your medical device software, and you're absolutely right, and it takes some time. This partially covers what I mentioned before, that we have a highly regulated field and special legislation. You definitely need to test updates before releasing them in the field. We are hoping that we can already influence with that small hacking project also maybe questions addressing this. So I guess in total, or in summary, it's really a learning process, and I'm happy that you all asked me these questions, because that shows that we definitely have to work on it, and it's valid to work on it, and that there are additional requirements needed, and we have to find consensus on on our further doings.
So
Thank you very much.
So thank you. I remember last year that you also highlighted this medical apps topic, and I believe we have similar problems, which as to whether you use Android or other things for the medical apps. And I remember that this is also a very important problem in practice. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. So yeah, well, I don't see things as a problem. I see them as a challenge, and
very good.
So we recently published a technical guidance for the cybersecurity of health applications, or in general applications, mobile applications that are dealing with highly sensitive data. So I can also attach it to my talk. It's the so-called technical guidance, Technische Richtlinie 03161, and that is pointing in that direction. So last year when we met, I basically told you when we look at certain applications, we find vulnerabilities also in health applications, and so one of the reasons why we wrote this technical guidance were exactly those findings. It has nothing to do with COVID-19 in principle, but it was good that we could release it now, and that it's now usable. So it's public. Yeah,
I agree. So I have a question with in this direction, because were you involved, or are you involved in medical device legislation? I know that the MDCG published recently a guideline in the context of the medical device regulation. Were you involved, and how does that fit into the topic of globalization? So because we are not an island, and I believe that we have the most globalization with regard to digitalization, and then so far, are you involved everywhere in legislation? Is that a topic for each legislation? Do we have a chain of decisions here?
So in parts, yes, we are involved, but also other ministries, like in that sense, the health ministry, for example, in the MDCG group. So, you know, cybersecurity, is like a vaccination, and there are people against vaccination and cybersecurity. So people kind of want us, people kind of need us. Maybe they realize thereafter they need us, but in several projects we are not initially included, but we are helping and guiding. So what happens quite often is that after a couple of meetings, people discover, hey, there is maybe cybersecurity and we should ask one. So this is how we come into play. We are working on standards, and in order to influence, or to maybe influence these things, and also our recommendations are can be cited or used for further developments. But I have the feeling that we, as Germany, as a small island in the EU, we definitely can influence what is going on, and I'm hoping to show strategies with the project to influence people in that perspective.
Great, thank you. So when there are no further questions,
we have some more questions in the chat.
Okay.
One more question by Mr. Nordmans. Medical device regulations see the device as being a system on its own, but due to networking, much functionality takes place elsewhere in the system, on the internet, for example, in the cloud. I think it's hard to divide medical device functionality, networking, and cloud services. How still to prove that the medical device is working properly?
Thank you for this question. I guess it's a very good question, but it's also, I would love to say, don't be afraid when things are moved to the cloud. I hope you're not, but you are definitely right. The more we open up, the more we do, let's say, a risk shift from the device to the cloud in terms of data security, for example. Yes, we are in another dimension, and we are here to work on that together. And this is so, I guess, to find a solution for that, you definitely need working groups or experts working especially on those topics, and as I said, to find consensus. So it's ongoing, and I guess it will never be finished because there will be new developments, so cloud 2.0 or whatever. So we have to be in close contact to find usable and applicable ideas and maybe recommendations and regulations to frame these things. I'm really sorry. So there is currently no perfect solution for that, but we can work on it.
Thank you. And there's another question. Instead of relying on closed source systems such as Windows, manufacturers could build upon open source systems like free BDS-based systems. Can you sketch out what the trade-offs are of customized open source systems versus commercial systems such as Windows? Question by Mr. Konersmann.
Yeah, so I think both have their advantages and disadvantages. When you refer to the closed source, with Windows, you really have a huge enterprise. It's one of the biggest enterprises, and they are really working on cybersecurity and making cybersecurity better. That's why they are constantly releasing cybersecurity updates. So in that sense, because it's big and they do care and they do a lot, in that sense, I would trust this closed source company. In terms of open source, it is really nice because you can see the code, you have full transparency. But what we experience, it's not always the case, but with open source projects, who is taking care of it? With Microsoft, you have responsibilities. With an open source project, your responsibilities are not necessarily really defined. So it can happen that even a transparent and open source code project, it is not maintained pretty well. This is what I wanted to say. So I would not say ban this, ban that, ban this and take that. I would really look at the context of usage. Yeah. I hope this answers your question a little bit.